This morning, we've kicked off a new year with a bunch of new different things. Dane is going to be going through the book of Colossians. Am I right, Dane? The book of Colossians. And when I get a chance to share with you, I'm going to be doing a study on godly wisdom. And so we're going to be kind of going in a bunch of different directions. But this morning, I thought, just out of curiosity, as we kind of kick this thing off, imagine that you had a question about how to wisely use your money. Okay? Can you think of somebody, a name of somebody, that you would go to bounce your ideas off of, or even ask questions about it? Can you imagine a name? Okay? All right? All right. So some of you got a name popped in your head. It's probably not your wife or husband, but it's a name that pops in your head. And how about this? You've got a teenager at home and things are getting rugged, okay? And this is your first teenager. It's not like you've had lots of experience, right? It's your first teenager and you go, I need some advice. I need some wisdom on how to deal with this creature. And can you think of a name of somebody you'd call, like Tony, somebody you'd call and say, can you give me some advice? I don't know what's happening at home. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. And can you think of a name? If you had a teenager, or maybe when you did have a teenager. A name's probably popping up in your head. How about purchasing a car? You got a little inheritance and you're going to be able to go out and buy a car. But you don't know anything about cars. Okay? Who would you go to? Can you think of who you would go to that you would purchase to help you purchase a car? Okay? Google it. Yeah, right. That's really helpful. Okay, can you think of a name? Now here's the interesting thing about those things. And by the way, you know who I'm talking about right here, right? You have two of the best auto mechanics on the island sitting right there. They only work, yeah. You don't even drive. What are you standing up for? Those names are probably different, right? Those names are probably different. The guy you go to for financial thing is probably not the same person you go to when your car is making those weird noises you don't know where it's come from. If you were ill, you're not going to call these guys, okay? You're going to call Jay Wayne and go, I'm breaking out in spots, I have fever, and there's something growing out of my ears. You're going to call Jay Wayne and try to figure it out. I mean, we have resource people, and we go to them primarily because we know that we're not capable of understanding how to do everything wisely. And of course, if you're having problems with your iPhone, you go to right here, okay? Anybody in these front row seats, you just say, they'll go, you know, because if you're 16 or under, you're way smarter than the rest of us about how to do that stuff, right? We all get that. Now, these are all different people and all different names. And if we're honest, if we're looking for advice on how to raise a kid, we don't go to somebody who all their kids are off the rails. You know, could you give me advice on how to raise children? Yours are all screwed up, but I'd like to know how you did it. You know, I mean, it's just, we don't do that. And when we do all these things, we are actually seeking wisdom. That's what we're doing. We're acknowledging that we have a finite ability in many, many areas, and we're going and seeking wisdom. And it's an honor to be sought out as wise. It really is an honor. When somebody comes to you and goes, you know what? You know how to repair surfboards better than anybody I know, Bernie. And I'm coming to you because I'm going to screw it up, and I just need your guidance and help, and how do I do this? And so it's an honor in our own various things that we have skills and stuff to be sought out as somebody with wisdom. And interesting, in the ancient cultures, wisdom was something that was a really high value. And fascinating enough, for thousands of years, most people honored those of us with hair this color or no hair at all, okay? Most of the people honored those of us with hair this color or no hair at all as people to whom wisdom was granted. They saw people who were older as as vessels of wisdom, probably just because they lived long enough and it survived, you know. They weren't doing all the stupid stuff that got their friends killed. But those people the elders would actually sit at the gates of the city, and I don't know what they were doing, playing cards or whatever, but people would go to them and go, I need some advice on my marriage. You know, I need some advice with my kids. I need some advice with my money. And these individuals would pour into them. They were considered a valued source. And actually, we live in a culture that sort of devalues that. And I found as I get older, I'm trying to, I look back on my life and I kind of go, you know what, I'd like to be able to impart some things to some guys that are younger, that are maybe just getting going. For example, not too long ago, I got thinking about all the different houses that I've lived in, okay? And my first house that I purchased was 850 square feet, 3 bedrooms. That's very, very small. In fact, I had to leave the room to change my mind. It was really small. And as family grew and stuff like that, I moved from a house, and as you know, many of you do this, your house got a little bigger. And now, except for holidays like this and all my family's back, it's just Lauren and I rambling around in a house that's way too big for us. And I started thinking about it, and I go, you know, I was just as happy in an 850 square foot house as I am in one that's way bigger than that. And every house that I lived in, even though it expanded, I was just as happy in that house. It's weird because you're in a certain space in life where you go, well, we need to get a bigger house. You know, that's going to make us much happier. But in the end, what you find is, it ain't the house. It's what's going on inside the house. And so for all the people that are, you know, got to go bigger and better and stuff, I'd like to say to them, you know, maybe that's the wrong game to get on. Maybe it's about what's inside the house that makes that house a happy place. And the size doesn't really matter. Whether you own it or rent it doesn't really matter. As much as what's going on inside. But that wisdom is hard to impart. Because at different places in your life, you get real focused. You know what I mean? And some of when you look back, you have all the wish I would have done it different list. And a lot of us look back and go, man, I should have sought some more wisdom on this and seen what people thought. Now, in the Bible, old people were endowed. They thought old people were endowed with wisdom. But they also, if you look through the scriptures about wisdom, wisdom was used in a very common sense. Like the Bible talks about the guys who were building the temple, the skilled artisans that were building the temple, and they said they were really wise in the way of this kind of construction or that kind of construction, this kind of musical stuff. They actually use the word wise. And of course, what they mean by that is that they had this natural wisdom about how to operate in their particular field. Okay? They were schmott guys in their particular field. They were experienced and intelligent in their particular field. And that's what we would call natural wisdom. And in this room, there's an immense amount of natural wisdom. And that's one of the things that makes human beings be able to work together because we don't all want to be car mechanics. We don't all want to be bankers. We don't all want to have various talents. We need each other. And God's designed it that way and given natural wisdom to all of us. But there's one kind of wisdom that is not very actively sought after in this world. In fact, you rarely hear about it except in a community situation like this, in a Christian church like this. And that's godly wisdom. And that's not wisdom you're born with. It's not wisdom that you generally would get in school. It can be wisdom that your parents try to impart on you, but it's really wisdom that you seek after. Because God knows that for each one of us, we have a very small context of our life. And God wants our lives to flourish. And he doesn't just want them to flourish because, you know, we're asking for good financial advice or know where to take our cars to get them repaired. He wants them to flourish so that the thing inside the house that makes the house the happy house comes from the wellspring of the Holy Spirit living out in our lives. And that godly wisdom is something that we have to seek and earnestly look for. And we need to not try to use our own resources to do that. there's a little kid. He had a sandbox. The sandbox was his world. It's where it had its little four walls, and he had his little cars, and he built his little sand houses and stuff like that. And as he was digging around in his sandbox, suddenly he came across this rock in the middle of his sandbox. Big rocks don't belong in the sandbox. So he got his little shovel out, and he's digging around the rock. And he keeps digging around the rock, wiggling the rock. But the rock doesn't want to come out very easily. Finally, he gets and tries to pry it out, and it rolls back onto his fingers. Finally, he pushes it outside of the hole that it's in, but he now has to get it over the walls of his sandbox. And as he gets too close to the wall, he tries to get it up, but it's a big rock, and he's a little boy. And he gets it up partway, and it rolls back and crushes his toes. And he's just getting more and more frustrated because there's this rock in his sandbox that can't get out, when all of a sudden a shadow appears across the sandbox. And it's his father. And the father looks down at him and he says, "Son, why don't you use all your strength and get that out of your sandbox?" The little boy is exasperated by that comment. He goes, "Well, I have. I've used all the strength that I have. I've used it all. It's crushed my toes. I pushed it. I tried this and that, and it does not work. It's not going to get out of my sandbox." He said, "Son, you did not use all the strength you had." "I did. I used all the strength." And he said, "No, you didn't use all the strength you had. You never asked me." With that, the father reached down, picked up the rock, threw it out of the sandbox. That little parable is a good example of most of us in our lives. God wants us in the little sandbox of the world that we have to flourish. But we have to ask Him for His wisdom, for His strength, for His power to live the life that flourishes. And it is this kind of wisdom that's the least sought after form of wisdom in our society. A couple of important things to grasp about this kind of wisdom, okay? It's generally the very, very opposite of human wisdom. In fact, it's counterintuitive to human wisdom. The scriptures say this: "My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways." In other words, God is not going to do what you necessarily expect Him to do. He's not going to lay down things that you're going to think is logical, and then He's not going to lay down things that you're going to think is logical. He's lay down things that you're going to say, "What? That? How does that work?" And if it doesn't take much time, just read the Gospels, and you'll start to pick up a bunch of this stuff. Things like, go the extra mile. That was told to a bunch of people who, when the Romans soldiers were marching through and they had a big, heavy bag to carry, they had the permission to grab any civilian off the street. Anybody on their way to work, on their way to school, to wherever, they grab them off the street, go, "Carry my bag." And you had to carry their pack or their gear for a full Roman mile. They knew Roman miles because they marked them with mile markers. At the end of that mile, you were free to go your own way, and then they would drag another guy. And Jesus told the people, "Hey, if some guy asks you to carry his bag for him, take it the extra mile." That was entirely wrong in the culture they were at. These are the enemy. What? Or turn the other cheek. Or never return evil to evil, but return evil with good. You want to go on top? Go to the bottom. Those things are, you read those things, you go, "How does that work? How can I possibly do that?" That's where godly wisdom comes in, to be able to train us how to do that, to see what Jesus is really getting to. And real wisdom always starts by bowing to and respecting the ultimate authority of God. It all comes down to what they call the fear of God. And the fear of God means the reverential fear. It's like the fear you have of electricity. Most of you aren't playing around, "Hey, it's a live wire, let me taste it," because we know what's going to happen with that. And so the scriptures teach us this. It says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." Doesn't mean we're terrified of Him. means we revere and respect and we bow to his awesomeness and go, look, you're smarter than me. You know better how to do it. You tell me what to do, and I'll just say, yes, sir, and I will do it. And it's not just revering, by the way, but it's obeying. Jesus told the classic story that's virtually familiar to all of you if you spend any time in the New Testament, because it's in a couple of the Gospels. Matthew 7 is where you find this, but he said this. He goes, look, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall because it had a foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house in the sand, and the rain came down, and the stream rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. And notice the key thing here. It's put them into practice. You can know the Bible backwards and forwards. You can have tons and tons of theological information at your fingertips, and we all do. Most of you, in fact, more people carry a Bible around with them now than ever before in the history of mankind. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have a Bible app on your phone? Put your hand up if you got a Bible. Okay, all right? You're carrying around a Bible. More people carry around a Bible now than ever before in history, and fewer people are reading it. But it's not just the reading of it. It's the obeying of what it says that makes the difference. In other words, building on the rock doesn't mean just having the blueprints. It means following them and doing the construction. And building on a rock is far more difficult instruction than it is building on sand. Building on the sand, you just take the thing, plop it out there, put a couple little stones down for cornerstones on it, and boop, you're ready to go. You can go enjoy the beach. Building on the rock means you got to haul stuff up under this bad boy. You got to drill down. You guys in construction know what I'm talking about. It's way more difficult to build on a rock. It takes a lot more resources, a lot more intentionality. It also means when you build on a rock, it means access to the beach takes more time. If your point is to enjoy the beach, it's real fast to throw the house down on the beach. The rock, you've got to get up there and it takes you some time to get down to the beach, right? You go, well, okay, what do you mean by that? Okay, I'll just give you an example. Sexual intimacy. Sexual intimacy. You know, if that's your beach, building on the sand's right there. Just open the door, boom, out you go, you know? And this world is doing that. Tinder and all the whole 9 yards. That's what it's all about. Instant gratification. I want it now. I want it fast. I want what I want. You go by what the rock, the one who built the rock says, the wisdom of God, and he's going, no, man. Sexual intimacy only belongs to people wearing one of these things. That's where sexual intimacy belongs. And so it's going to take you longer to get to the beach. It means you got to court the girl. It means you got to care for the girl. It means you got to love the girl. It means you've got to do the right things before you get to the beach. It's harder. It's harder than just getting gratification more instantly. But there's wisdom in it as well. Building on the rock means ultimately working twice as hard to get something that other people, for your house, the safety and security for your house, that other people might go, oh, well, you're never going to need that. That's never going to happen. You don't have to worry about that. And it's a hassle in many, many ways. But most of us have seen what happens to people that build on faulty foundations. If you were here during Hurricane Iniki, remember we drive down Millionaire Row down here, right along, where PK's and where the spouting horn is and stuff. Remember how there were no houses left there? Just little shells, okay? Because they decided to build on the beach. And 30-foot wave came and decided they'd take their house away. And there was wisdom because guys are going, hey, that's a really dangerous place to build. Because sometimes things do happen. And notice this, nobody is forbidden to build on the sand. Nobody is forbidden to build on the sand. You can be an idiot if you want. Okay? God gives you permission to be a fool. God gives you permission to screw up your life. But if you're looking to be wise, he's got a blueprint and a plan for that. Right? There was a guy, and I'm always amazed at people who, you lay out the blueprint for them, you lay out the plan for them, and they just ignore it. I still remember a number of years ago, I sat with a guy, and we were talking about his marriage. And the problem was that he didn't want to get a job. He'd been married for a long time, but he never really got a job. He got sort of an education and everything, but he never got a job. And after a while, his wife was fed up with it. She goes, look, I want this guy to go out and get a job. And I'm ready to end this marriage if he doesn't get a job. I'm tired of supporting him. I'm tired of supporting the kids while he's kind of doing nothing. And so I sat down with this guy and I go, hey man, do you want to save your marriage? Oh yeah, I want to save my marriage really badly. Do you want to be apart from your kids? No, I don't want I want, okay man, you want it? I got wisdom for you. It's really simple. Get a job. In fact, on the way here to talk to you, I drove by McDonald's. They had hiring at McDonald's. I guarantee you, I promise you, in fact, get in the car with me. We'll go down to McDonald's. You pick up a job at McDonald's. Maybe you can get one at Burger King too. But get a job at McDonald's. It will do wonders in saving your marriage. Yeah, I got to do that. I go, okay, get in the car with me. No, I'll get a job, I laid out the blueprint. I gave him the plan. I go, it's really biblical, because the Bible says that if a man doesn't care for his family, he's worse than an infidel. Yeah, that's bad. Yeah, I know it's bad. So God's telling you to get a job. All the godly wisdom's telling you to get a job. I'm telling you to get a job. Your wife's telling you to get a job. What do you need to do? I need to get a job. Okay. You think you got a job? No. And you know what happened to his marriage? All right? It's interesting how we have wisdom at our fingertips, but we don't use it. I had another friend who, we were talking about this kind of thing, and it was actually right around the time when kids were graduating from high school, and you want to give them a meaningful gift. I like to give high school graduates C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, because I know many of them, they're going into secular colleges and stuff. It'll give them a foundation of great reason about why the Christian faith is vital. And we were talking about stuff, and he goes, yeah, I give a book too. I go, yeah, really? And this guy, by the way, he had his financial house really well in order. He was a real smart guy financially. He goes, yeah, I was raised poor. I didn't have any money when I was raised. And when I graduated from high school, this old guy gave me a book. The book was actually written in 1926. And it was called The Richest Man in Babylon. Any guys ever read that book? Okay, only Dane. Okay, one of the Richest Man in Babylon, all right? I'd never heard of the book. And he goes, that book completely changed my life. It helped me to be able to understand the world of finances and da-da-da-da-da. And I go, wow, well, that's really cool. He goes, I always write in it that this book is what helped me get my financial house in order. It's not a particularly spiritual book or anything like that, but it's just on financial wisdom. And he wrote in the forefront of the book that if you read this book all the way through as a young man or young woman, it will really help set the pace for you so you won't have financial worries in the future. I go, well, that's really cool. And he goes, yeah, but you know what else I do? And I go, what? He goes, I write a really nice check because I know that you get a book as your graduation present. It's like, really? A book, called The Richest Man in Babylon? Why do I know anything about Babylon? I'm not into history, And you're not going to read that. And he goes, but after the thing I write in it and stuff, I take the check and I put the check in the book 2/3 of the way through. And he goes, and it's a nice check. And he could write nice checks. I go, wow, that's cool. People must be stoked when they found out it. And you know what he said to me? He goes, I've never had one person cash it. And he'd been doing this for a bunch of years. They've never had any of them cashed. Now, if you get a book for your graduation, Some of you are running home, thumbing through this. But doesn't that tell us something about ourselves? How wisdom is at our fingertips and we don't grasp it? How somebody is trying to pour into our life and we're too busy with the bright and shiny trinkets that are right in front of us? We're all kind of like that because wisdom is something that you have to work for. It doesn't just fall on you in the middle of the night. It's something you have to seek, dig, uncover. Godly wisdom is designed to be like that. Now, you can be completely whole and pure before God. That's free. To be wise, that costs. Time, energy, focus to be wise. And so in the upcoming months, as we talk about godly wisdom, we're going to talk about it really in specific areas, not in general areas like this, but we're going to talk about godly wisdom in your family, godly wisdom with your resources and finances, in your marriage and your sexuality, in the community that we share together, in the goals and in success, and more. And I hope you'll enjoy that ride as we take it. But as we think about this, a lot of us have spent our lives being more fools than we have wise. And the really cool thing about that is that all around the world right now, there are Christians everywhere who are going to do and have done or are going to do what we're going to do right now. We're going to celebrate the fact that God has taken our foolishness away from us. We're going to celebrate the idea that no matter how much of an idiot we were, no matter how rebellious we were, no matter how egotistical we were, that we thought we were smarter than God, and we screwed things up, that God stepped onto this earth in the form of human flesh and said, you know what? They deserve to get scorched, but I'm going to take the penalty. And so this morning, we're going to invite you to join with us in the Lord's Supper. I would say this: if you're not a believer, this is your opportunity to become one. Before you take the bread, before you take the cup, invite Him. Use the godly wisdom that's right at your fingertips to start fresh and go, okay, I'm going to make you my Lord. I'm going to make you my master because of what you did for me. If you're in rebellion, you don't want anything to do with God, feel free to pass it on. God knows how to get to you. But if you're a believer here, this is what we do as family. And so the elements are going to come up at the front as Jeremy's going to lead us in a song. Take the cup, take the bread, and just hang on to it. And then we're going to break bread together. All right? So guys, you bring that up. Thanks, Jeremy.